Record. Great. So go ahead and pull up the PowerPoint and the agenda. So if you pull up the PowerPoint, the first thing you'll see is what looks like a cycle, like a data cycle loop. And I wanted to share that for a few reasons. And this is what we're going to use as our team builder today. So the outside, so the outside of the loop is like this big blue loop, and that's like a culture loop. So if you remember in the beginning, when we started meeting, we spent a lot of time doing team builders, getting to know each other, getting to know each other's working styles. We did like the quadrants, we did norms, we set a vision. Teresa doesn't want me to see her computer, so I can put it up on my computer.
Oh, it starts zooming in too crazy.
And then we went through, after we like spent the time with culture, we wanted to get like more concrete about like what was actually happening with students. So we started talking about like what are all the assessments you actually already have from your school? What is it telling us? Like, is this enough information? Is this the right information? We then looked at those assessments and decided, what is these assessments missing? Like, what additional information do we need? And we came up with those benchmark assessments, which you all looked at. We looked at together as a team. We did some like item analysis on. Then last week, you all actually gave your assessment. So shout out to everyone for giving the assessment, grading it on time. I know that was a huge time commitment. And now we actually are able to disaggregate some data. So like when you put that in that tracker, you're now able to see like by student, by class, who's under the threshold, who's in threshold, who's at mastery. And then a month or so ago, we developed a SMART goal. So today, we're going to revisit that SMART goal and say, now that we actually have some benchmark data, where are we in reference to the SMART goal that we created, which if you remember was super ambitious. And then we're going to move to a correction action plan, which is going to allow us to plan more purposefully. So we're going to think about where do we end with our SMART goal? Where do we want to be? How are we strategically going to get there? So the two questions that came up with, and you can answer whatever one's sticking out to you in a moment. But as you look at this, what is called the data-driven decision-making process, so this DDI loop, how comfortable or familiar are you with this data-driven decision-making process? So literally on a scale of 1 to 5, and then the second part, which strengths can you offer the team as we work through this process together? So the idea is that if you see this as a loop, we've done establishing team culture, collecting data, rigor, disaggregating, SMART goals, corrective action plan already, but this is a circle, so we're going to keep doing it. So the next time we loop around, based on what we've done so far, what are you super comfortable with that you can lead the team through? So Tania can do less talking and less leading, and we can all lead. And then what are you not feeling so good about? And then like anyone can jump in, because that's going to help us set ourselves up for success as we action plan. So like who wants to go?
I feel like I'm comfortable with culture, and developing SMART goals. I think the biggest trouble that I probably will have is making the assessments, or like building assessments that align to content, and making sure that they're rigorous enough. And I think also probably understanding like maybe not understanding what my students need, but how to implement the instruction, I guess.
So like this corrective action implementation piece.
I think that's the thing that I'm probably going to struggle the most with too, is actually designing the corrective instruction action plans. Especially now, like we took this test on a bunch of standards from Unit 1 and we've moved on to completely new standards. How do we fit it into our, schedule that's moving along at a super steady pace already?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Probably I see you like nodding a little. What are you thinking?
Well, I mean, Kevin and I have talked about that, how we're now in completely, like, we're not even reading like fiction text anymore. Like, we're now into informational text, and so how can we, like, we've just done this. We obviously see like area of like weakness that our students have, and like we need to support it, but we just like don't have the time. And so like, how can we make sure they're getting what they need?
I think for me, I feel confident in disaggregating data, so looking at it at different levels, focusing in on different skills. But then also, I just don't have the time to do it as often as I probably should when I'm doing like my assessments. Like, to be honest, I pick my assessments, I see where kids where a general understanding or a general gap is, and that's typically what I may focus on moving forward, but I don't disaggregate it to the level that I know I could and use that information to inform instruction, just because similar to Kevin, you're continuing to move on to teach other content areas, but then also just time.
Yeah. So it sounds like we have a few things that's coming up. Like we do have some strengths, like around culture building, around like getting data. We have a ton of data, right? Some of us feel strong with like analyzing the data, creating SMART goals, which is super important. There seems to be like an adaptive challenge though around like creating a corrective instruction plan, implementing and like kind of monitoring that progress, and then like some technical challenges around like time. How do I fit that in like this cycle that my school already wants me to do? So those are things that like I'm going to continue to try to think about, and I'm going to be meeting you all to like brainstorm because I'm not here all the time. But I think these things are super important, and as you already saw in the data, like there are gaps that we have to address, and we're going to figure that out. So in order to look at this data, back in the day we created a SMART goal, and I don't think that we have revisited that SMART goal as a team for about a month. So if you go ahead and click on, I believe it's PowerPoint slide 2, I want you to take just 2 minutes to read over this slide.
It's okay. It's going to be a presentation. It'll be all right.
Go ahead and take 2 minutes. Please tell me this SMART goal looks super familiar.
Yeah.
Thumbs up at the top. Okay, great. So we did pretty well.
So on the mastery tracker, what does the overall mastery mean? That's not the percent of students that mastered the,
No.
because I only had, oh my kids, that's so bad. I'm so upset.
No.
I shouldn't have given this test, and here's the substitute question.
And just look at me with your beautiful eyes when you're ready. Be sure to look at where it says current reality at the bottom. That's super important.
Yeah.
So our current reality is based on the assessments you all just gave last week, right? So, and just to remember, I'm using the mastery threshold below or basic standards that come from Performance Matters. So based on Performance Matters, mastery is 70%, threshold is between 50% and 69%, and then below threshold would be 49% or lower, right? So just to give you all some context. So this means that 81% of our students score below 51%. And for our benchmark 1, we are now at 3% mastery, so 3% of our students scored above 70%, and then 16% of our students score between 50% and 69%. So I want to just ask some questions, because I actually think it's important for us to talk through this, because I think we're thinking about these numbers in isolation. So when you see our current reality, are these numbers what you predicted? When you see our current reality, what does this make you think or feel? And then when you see our current reality, what does this make you want to do next? And feel free to jump in at any point to answer any of those questions. Whatever one is speaking to you, you don't have to address all of them.
I think that what you said, your numbers were a little bit wrong. I think that our goal was even more ambitious, because I'm looking at my data and it looks like kids had to score 80% to master,
Yes,
and
so-
70% to be threshold.
Yeah, so that's what the tracker says, but I didn't use those trackers numbers.
Oh, you didn't?
No, I use Performance Matters thresholds, because that is the
Okay.
assessment we're going to be using at the end of the year.
Is there a way to change the tracker so that we
I'm
can see
not a
that?
master at Excel, but someone on the TFA team is, and I can ask her about it. So
Yeah,
then
that would be good.
So then, because right now ours is color coded differently, but I didn't use it based on the color code. I actually used it based on the real numbers in the
Okay,
tracker. not the
so it's
color code.
50 to 69%?
50 to 69% is threshold, 70 and above is mastery.
Okay. Well, I want to see how my kids did according to that.
Anyone else have some thoughts? That's a good clarifying question, Kevin.
It's a little frustrating because looking at, like, when I was grading it, I knew, like, a lot of my students were just careless and didn't pay attention. When they got to the essay question, I had a lot of students not even answer the last 4 questions because they're used to the essay being the last, and so they answered the question 8 and just ignored that there were 2 more pages at the end. And, like, didn't answer. And, like, that's, I mean, and I should have checked their test when they handed it to me, but they, you know, they handed me their test. They had worked on it for at least an hour 15. Like, I assumed that they had completed it all, so like I didn't double check, but you know they like the fact that they didn't, you know, so I was like really frustrated when I was grading it to see because there are students who could have, a lot of it were students who could have and should have hit that 70%, and looking back they got like 66 or so like they were close and they just paid attention to the rest of the test.
One thing I'm thinking that's positive, like obviously our mastery didn't raise enough. It says on benchmark 1 our goal is 8% mastery, and we only got 3%. But if you look at like the threshold, we only had 8% at the beginning, and it's up to 16%, which is a big
We
jump.
doubled our threshold.
Yeah, benchmark 1, it looks like we're gonna have 23% of kids somewhere nearing mastery, and we have 19%. So it's not so bad.
There's a cloud, a sun under the cloud somewhere. Yes.
Although I was thinking the same thing when I put in my data. I'm like, "Ah, these kids were so careless. How could they get this wrong?" And then I just kept seeing such low scores over and over and over again. By the end, I was like depressed.
Was anyone surprised, or did this look like what you predicted? Was anyone surprised?
I was surprised at how they did on the test when I was grading it, but once I saw my class, this makes sense to me.
So for me, as like your coach and someone who's supporting you, I wasn't surprised by these numbers for primarily one reason. You all have been like chugging through with content. So like you have like some type of like map or system that you're following. You're going from unit to unit. But in order to actually see growth, we have to be like assessing and reassessing strategically. So because we've been like giving assessments, we've been teaching, but none of it has been super strategic. We've like been going on along with the plan. We actually can expect students' scores to change drastically. I actually think this 6% threshold is a testament to like the amount of like talent and potential that's like in your classroom with your students. And like if we could actually be super strategic, which we're gonna talk about next, I think to Kevin's point, we can see this mastery number grow. Our second benchmark happens before Christmas break. I just want to remind us of that timeline if you remember from that DBI cycle. And that's like a benchmark that we'll have data from the whole team, so not just our 4th through 6th graders. So like that is coming soon. So what we're going to roll out next is we're going to talk about like what exactly is corrective action and why is that different. So if you click on, if you scroll down on the agenda, there's a corrective action planning. So what I provided for you is when I'm talking about corrective action, this is a template we're going to use to plan some corrective instruction. I've given you here an exemplar of what it actually looks like to look at an assessment, then strategically plan to raise your scores. The exemplar you're looking at is a math exemplar. One, because what I don't want us to do is to like have looked at an ELA 1 and think that our corrective instruction has to look exactly like this person and this is like the bar, right? We also are going to be like realistic with ourselves. But I do want you to think about what does it look like for a teacher to really think through how to reteach. So go ahead and take 2 minutes to read this over and then I'll bring us back home.
Mr. Davis, can you please come to the main office in Mrs. Stenson's office? Thank you.
Could you put a note on our agenda to like remind me that checking about Excel?
Sure.
So I can see if I can fix that. Thank you. And just give me a thumbs up when you're ready. When you're looking at the corrective instruction plan, pay back attention to the questions that is asking you to think about, and then like what are some of the teachers' response answers. Teresa has given me her thumbs up.
I give my kids for doing that.
Holly gave me a hat big thumbs up.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So if you click on the PowerPoint slide away, I just put a few questions. So what is the value of planning for corrective instruction after we've had some chance to look over this template, right? What are the challenges that might suffice for teachers and students when planning this way? And then what strategies could we implement? And then specifically, how can Tamia be supportive in this corrective instruction planning process, knowing that this is where we're going. And the idea is that corrective instruction is very different from reteaching. So when we reteach, we're literally going in our classroom, we're saying, I taught standard RL 4.4, students didn't master it, so I'm gonna reteach RL 4.4 the exact same way I just taught it, and then like hope magic works. But when our data told us that didn't work for students, and maybe we didn't do the right thing as teachers to teach it, corrective instruction is actually making us be super strategic about how do we teach that, how will we teach that differently with students didn't master it, how will we target them in our corrective action planning. So again, like, let's look at these 4 questions, and I think it'll be helpful to open it up whole group so we can hear what each other are thinking, and anyone can start us off.
I mean, I'm noticing supports for student efficacy. So how can we be more effective and in supporting our students and how they learn and how they like different modalities? How can we engage them so that they understand the skill and like can apply it to a more authentic situation, you know, outside of the classroom? And then how do they set their own goals and understand the benchmark that they need to reach as students instead of us just telling them what the benchmark is or telling them what they need to know? How do they figure out what it is they actually need to know in order to understand the standard and actually understand what the end game is for this lesson?
Anyone else want to answer that? I think particularly like what is the value of teaching this way, and I think it may be helpful for us to think through challenges that might suffice for us, considering that's where we're going next.
I just think about time, the feasibility, and especially since these aren't standards that we're teaching right now in our units. So how do we, just like how do you, I don't even know, like how to do it and how to do it successfully without, you know.
So you're feeling like this it's similar to our look around, like feeling this like technical burden of time, right? Like being a real thing. When you're looking at this directive action planning outside of time, do you feel like this is important? Like this would be like a useful way to like plan instruction if time was not a challenge? Yeah, okay. So I just want to make sure, because like, those are 2 separate things. I want to make sure that we're not disagreeing that like planning strategically will be helpful. We do have to think through the time piece, absolutely.
But it's just, I mean, I feel like I don't even have time to do everything they expect me to do in a day. And so how am I gonna add in this like additional piece of it, like how they get this instruction?
Yeah, and I think it's also, I agree that it's important, and I think beyond just time, just the structure of our day, it's expected that X amount of time is spent on this thing. Like if I look at like even my reading block, only 30, maybe 45 of my minutes of my time is actually whole group. The rest of that is me doing guided reading rotations. So even just my time in the sense of kids, whole group, and that ability to be interface with them is very limited. Like even assessments don't technically work within the system that they created as primary, but we have to give assessments. So it's like this weird thing where yes, it's very important, but figuring out what does that look like when you're both fighting with time in the sense of I need to get these standards mastered by this date, but also like in a day, these are the things that are expected to happen in the current classroom.
Because if it's not the first day of the cycle for me, I get 15 minutes of whole instruction from day 2 through 7.
So let's move on to questions 3 and 4 then. So like what strategies could we implement potentially to address some of these challenges? And if we can't think of them collectively, whole group, we can like brainstorm independently. You can shoot them to me. It's also something like I may do some like individual check-ins with you all to kind of see where some things are popping up. So like what strategies could we implement, and then like how could you use me in support of this corrective instruction plan? Because right now what I'm hearing is that we have so many days to master content, but when I look at the data, kids haven't mastered content. Yeah. So like we also have to like be real about that like we're using our time and we're trying to meet the goals of our schools, but we're not meeting the needs of kids right now. So like what strategies potentially could we address? How can Tania, like literally, how can I be an asset knowing that I'm about to have a conversation with your principal, that I'm here at least once a week? Like how could you be potentially using me differently?
Just to clarify, so you're telling us that we need to focus more, I mean, we have been focusing more, or I hope we've been focusing more on the needs of our students over what our school is asking of us.
School/county.
Is that what you're saying? Like, I mean, not to disregard your school and the county, but like, are you giving us the permission to be like, sorry, no, this is what my students need?
So I don't have the authority to
But
give
like, can you like
but
give us the nudge?
But I will say that, like, in my experience, administrators, principals push back less when you have data to prove that what you're doing is working.
Okay.
Fundamental fact. I also say that, like, I'm not a teacher here, but like I have leverage to communicate with your administrators and your principals. So like, if you all feel comfortable, these are also additional things that I can bring up, right? So like using me in that way, and I will continue to also think through this. What I am saying 100% is that our data is indicating that something has to change. That's what we all 100. It sounds like we all 100% agree on. We don't necessarily know how to get there, so it sounds like, one, I need to go back to the table and come up with some strategies, maybe potentially bring those to my director to say, I have a teacher team who's struggling with like time and all of the things that are asking them as a county. What suggestions do you potentially have? And then using my voice to advocate for you all now that you all have a principal. Like, those are the things that are popping up on my head immediately.
Well, I would love to take like a week to go back over these standards. And if you could talk to our principal and say, would you mind if your teachers were a week further behind on the Unit 2 lesson plan, which, you know, we're already behind because it's already too fast and we didn't really get it in time.
Yeah.
But
It's not only that we didn't get it in time, but it's also like there are other things happening in school that
all
like
the time.
do not allow us to teach. Like, we're constantly being pulled out of our classrooms. We're constantly having to do some type of testing. There's assemblies going on. There's some other type of event.
90 minutes a week on iReady.
Yeah, the computer time is stressed instead of actual instructional time. I have all of my students need to be on iReady at least 45 minutes.
And then we
a
get chewed
week.
out every
Yeah.
single
And then
week
I
if
get
they're
emailed,
not.
they email the entire staff, like everyone's stats on iReady.
Mine's
and
gotten
like, I
worse.
just, like,
Last week
I'm
0
not
points, this
reading my
week
computer
maybe
time.
20.
So it's making me think a few things. I wonder if, I would be surprised if standards aren't cycling. Like, that would strike, like if.
Well, yeah, they
They
are.
are.
Yeah, so like if some of the standards that were just on this assessment should be popping up in Unit 2. So could we be super creative about like when we are addressing and teaching those standards? It also sounds like I will have,
But Unit 1 was all literature, at least for 4th grade. Unit 1 was all literature, Unit 2 was all informational. So it really isn't cycling until Unit 3. And I
Okay.
feel like if I want to address, yeah, maybe, we haven't
We
seen
don't
it.
know what unit
But
3 is.
if I want to address these things now, because I see a big problem with
Yes.
it, and we got through a whole unit and they're still at whatever 38% mastery or whatever my kids did, then I want to do something about it before I move on to new skills, because what's the point? Like, bring them up to 38% mastery on these new skills and then try to fix the problem?
yeah.
I don't know.
We touch on, in this 5th grade touches on RL
For 1 week.
5-4 on cycle 4.
So one
And
out
it's
of
one thing, it's
1
just
week
point
out of
of
the
view.
entire quarter, and it's one of the standards.
I think one thing, like, I don't consider myself a corrective instruction planner by any means, but something that I'll do when I see kids struggling is, because I know the time consideration is their homework would reflect what I want them to practice on versus what we're actually learning in class sometimes. And I have tried to start figuring out like small snippets of ways to review information with them. So like when kids come in the morning, that's a lot of dead time, and so trying to give them like morning work that reflects something they may have learned like 3 weeks ago, but I want them to practice on. And I'm also trying to, and if you walk past my classroom in the morning, I do flashcards at the door before you get enter. Like for my kids right now, we're learning sight words. They need to increase by 16 by January. So like today's number is 4. You need to get 4 words before you can go in. And kids who I know who are struggling, I may lower to 2. But trying to find those dead times where I'm losing time, where I'm not really instructing, to try to reinforce standards that I know that they need. Some stuff that like right now we're working on L blends. Make or break, my kids will be okay if they don't master that, so we don't have to focus on that on homework versus them mastering certain high frequency words. So trying to find those moments of like that you can capture, and that's what I'm trying to do in my classroom. It's still time consuming, but
I mean,
I'm gonna push us
I can
for.
see that with high frequency words.
I'm gonna push us forward for 2 weeks with 1 because we have 10 more minutes and I wanna pose a suggestion. So our next step is that we are actually going to create a corrective action plan. And my original plan that I'm adjusting on the fly based on the needs I'm hearing from our team is that you are going to bring your completed corrective action plan that you were ready to implement to our team meeting on Monday that we're having at the office. What I'm now gonna have you do is to complete your corrective action plan, but instead of our meeting Monday, we're talking about how we're gonna roll this out. We're actually gonna use Monday for you to bring your completed plan and to get feedback from other team members. So because everyone acknowledged that like this is a space where this skill is new, we're gonna use Monday to get feedback because it's one of your very first time doing it. If you click on slide 4 in that PowerPoint, I created correction action plan buddies. So this is me acknowledging that this last week, Julia, Kevin, and Holly have done significantly more work than the two of you had to do in like creating a calendar and deciding when you're giving your assignments. But we are a team, and like your kids are going to them next, right? So like if they are not successful, your kids will not be successful. So what I had created was corrective action buddies. I'm gonna be Julia's buddy because she missed today, which means she missed a lot. So I need to catch her up. And then I could assign Teresa and Alicia to be buddies with you, Holly, and you, Kevin. So what this means is that like if they say like, hey, I need a thought partner, I need another set of eyes, can you look at this data queen, and like tell me what trends you see that I'm not seeing, you're gonna step in to help them, to support them, to make sure that their corrective action plan is ready for our team meeting on Monday. You are also gonna be the people when we meet on Monday. We're gonna do a protocol to give feedback. You're gonna be giving feedback to your buddy on their corrective action plan, right? So you're really gonna be supporting them because like we are a whole team that's doing this. And I want you all to see this because the next cycle around, since you all have an assessment calendar, you'll be creating one. So you get to like be like training wheels now and then real wheels next time. But when we're all real wheels, we don't have time to catch you up. So I also want you to be able to see how this process works and to look at it and be ready to go. So let's pop back to our agenda. Click on where it says corrective action plan template. I want to make sure that everyone has a template, that the template works. This is the template that Julia, Kevin, and Holly are filling out with our help. We're going to be great teammates, and we're going to help them work through this. My suggestion to the three of you, Julia, who's not here, so we're talking about her hypothetically, Holly and Kevin, think about, each of you had at least 4 standards on your benchmark one assessment. Find the ones, so it sounds like Holly found a standard that is looping. For that first, where it says pull out a standard or a skill, focus on that standard, because you actually have time in this cycle to reteach that standard. Kevin, it sounds like you haven't looked, or you're like, you don't think it loops. Potentially find the informational text standard that is the same or similar to the literacy text standards, and then you and I can work on how do we include supplementary text so that they're working on those same skills parallel to each other. But finding some similarities so it doesn't feel like I'm coming out the blue with this different standard, and it's going to completely throw me off my basic guide. We can then talk about actually implementing that on Monday. So we're not like completely saying, forget what my school and my county says, I'm gonna do my own thing, but we're gonna say like, hey, I'm gonna stick with what my school and county says. My kids need this extra thing, so I may deviate for an hour or so, but I'll get back on track. And I feel like that's gonna be easier for us to sell when we have a conversation with your principal. So is everyone clear on what we're bringing to Monday's team meeting?
Mm-hmm.
Thumbs up if we're good on that. Also, reach out to me if you have a question or concern proactively about bringing this to Monday's meeting, okay? Okay, so we have 5 minutes, so I want to get some updates and next steps because I have some good ones. So I have been emailing your principal. She has been super responsive via email, which has been great. And her and I are going to meet on December 1st, which is a Thursday. So I'm going to meet with her like immediately after our team meeting on Thursday. If there's anything that you want me, I think I audited for this year, that you want me to share or not share with your principal, let me know.
You just
Again,
share what you're going to share on the first.
I don't have a plan yet, but like I actually could. Like I could like, if that would be helpful, come to our meeting on Thursday with like a plan of like what I plan to like share with her. But like it also would be helpful. That plan could be influenced by what you all need. So like if you all need to say something to her, if you all need it to come from a different voice or perspective, please let me know. Like my work is to coach you to move your students and to be your advocate. And like she doesn't hire me or fire me. She has no dictation over my job. So I can have a conversation with her potentially that you all can't have. So please use me in that way. And she's been really excited to have the conversation. She's excited to figure out like how she can best support the 5 of you. So that sounds like a pro, but please let me know. So that can be jump on the phone with me for 5 minutes, shoot me a text, shoot me an email, all of those things. Add to my, Alicia, if you could add to our plan that Tania's gonna bring like just some quick bullet points of what she plans to talk to Ms. Stinson about.
Oh, that'd be good. 'Cause that's
To
what I was
Thursday's meeting. And that teachers, you all want to follow up with me if you need anything specific on that plan. The second part, benchmark data leads up to SMART goal. Okay, oh no, I'm reading Alicia's notes and not what my update plan not for you all. Sorry. Okay, so JHU student achievement reflection. So that's coming. Remember, that's like a 3-part assignment. I have been advocating to my team and to our JHU team that like my Flintstone teachers team is dope. You all have been pushing yourselves and doing some crazy work. I also am your seminar instructor. Can I replace an assignment? So what I'm going to do is that when you come to our meeting on Monday with your completed action plan, that is going to replace your student achievement data reflection. So that
like
is
that.
one assignment that you do not have to do.
So for,
Go ahead.
for Teresa and me,
That is me holding you accountable to supporting them. So if you support them and you give them feedback on their corrective action plan, you will both, so like what that means is that I think you two are partners, right? You two will both upload the same corrective action plan that's gonna indicate like what you did, where your feedback is. That's what I'm gonna grade based on the JHU rubric, which means that you all will get a great score because you would have done it alone and we would have done it as a team. Again, like if I can, like I am trying my best to advocate for you and let my team know this incredibly smart work that you are doing. If I can do that any better, please let me know. But this is like one of the ways that I'm trying to do that for you all. You are bringing your completed corrective action plan to our Monday meeting, which is going to be at the office right before you all meet for your other meeting. And I think those were my big updates and next steps. Does anyone else have an update they need to share with the team before we close out? And I'm sorry that we were talking real fast because I was 10 minutes late. Does anyone have anything else they need to share?
Are we having our meeting on Monday or not?
I don't think we are, but I think ours has been,
Has it been canceled?
well, we have like so many people are in ingenuity prep and they all said they're gonna be out of town, so she was asking Chrissy if we could replace ours, and we haven't heard any follow-up on it.
So my gut is going to be that the answer is going to be no, and this is why. Because the actual content facilitator for Tuesday's ELA session is unavailable, and she's like, the school is closed and he is unavailable, and she's trying to find a replacement content facilitator versus canceling the session. So my gut is that there will be
So
some.
she was asking if we could like change like the phone.
Yeah, so there'll be something. So, we didn't please put feedback at the bottom of like our agenda so that I have feedback for our meeting so we can continue that culture building loop. And thank you, lovely. I'll be in the building for like about 15 minutes. If you like me, text me, call me.
Call me, beat me.
Right? Alicia, did you see my email about let me know what day you want me to come about your social studies plan? That looked amazing.